So without any further delay, I'd like to welcome today's guest speaker to the stage, Michael Schell, who, like I said, is a cybersecurity professional and self-proclaimed utility knife. And he also hosts the cyber happy hour. I'm guessing this is somewhere in LA, right? Pasadena, maybe? In Pasadena, cool. So if you want to check that out, please talk to him afterwards. And he's going to be talking about navigating the psychological framework of the cybersecurity world and all the really hyper-intelligent people that work within it, and sales and all that great stuff. So please, warm welcome from Michael Schell.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between. My name is Michael Schell. I run Cyber Happy Hour. We're up on our third year. Innovate Pasadena has done really great things. I really appreciate your support, and I'm sure the rest of the team does too this morning. What we're going to do is kind of break down a little bit how, if you're in sales or you were thinking about coming into the cyber industry, what to expect, what kind of mind games you're going to see, as well as the level of intelligence on some of the practitioner side, and try to maneuver and manipulate your way through that as you see fit. So for the folks that have who are not in sales, don't raise your hands, but how many of you in here have had a positive sales impact somewhere, sometime in your life, buying something? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Matt, oh, you're too nice, Panda. I sold to her. I was fishing for a compliment. How many of you have had a negative or poor experience from a salesperson when they push you into something that you didn't want to buy and now you're stuck with it? All your hands should be up. Every single one of you have been hustled before. It's happened to me. It's where I thought it would be a fun job to get into. That being said, sales is not just about getting someone to buy something. Sales is about getting somebody to feel trust in you and to actually feel their pain and solve their problems. At the end of this, I'll show you a little slide in a book I recommend reading. To start this, we're going to do a little Glenn Ross, Alec Baldwin. So I wore the black belt, black shoes. I didn't have suspenders to look like a total sales douche, but I got the red tie, not down across my belt line, a la Donald Trump. So these two movies are often cited in a lot of inside sales offices, inside stock trading floors. Also, it's dead. It's a movie. Anyone who's pitching you this stuff as a way to learn sales is probably not good at sales. Boiler Room, great movie. Ben Affleck, so whatever. But Glenn Ross used to be a play. If you've not seen the movie, go watch the movie. It's a great movie. The scene I'm about to show you is not the movie. The movie's way better than the scene. However, I'm setting the tone for this conversation. That's the pressure of sales in 1990, 1980. That shit's dead. Anyone who pitches that kind of model of motivation is probably a liar, number one. Number two, can't sell because they picked the team. So if they can't select good candidates, they're obviously showing poor leadership. The reason why I show you that is to give a little bit of an indicator of the pressure that comes with being in a sales job. 1 second here. Let me get out of this. Not that anyone is not familiar with it, but any entrepreneur knows the importance of a good sales team and good sales professionals and great sales leadership. Sales isn't just about taking money from the customer. That's a turn and burns type of approach. I've been fortunate to have some pretty good sales mentors. I've had tremendous amounts of sales training back in my days at IBM, and multiple startups, multiple failures, multiple thrown out of accounts because the product or the service didn't meet the requirements that I sold to the customer. So I've been through this before. Many of my colleagues have as well. So I think the interest for folks to jump into cyber is quite appealing. There's a tremendous amount of money to be made in cybersecurity these days. Every week or so, you're hearing about a new breach or a new problem that's occurring in a result of an organization not doing the right things, not adequately investing. So as a salesperson, you feel a little bit of animosity to the customers who refuse to invest appropriately. They end up turning up in the news eventually. Equifax is a good example of that, of poor leadership across the board. But outside of that, it could be very, very rewarding. Outside of the money piece, the commission checks are great. The fact, though, that you have long-term customers that trust and appreciate what you bring to the table is the most rewarding, at least for me. So if you hear a salesperson talking about or referring to a customer or somebody who a prospect in a derogatory way, run. They're not a good salesperson. They're looking at you as a number to get to the end. Maintaining credibility. It's super, super critical. If you cannot maintain credibility, you're not going to have a long career in the cybersecurity industry. So that means you don't say things you don't know are accurate. You don't lie. You don't make things up. There are ways to talk through customer requests or client requests of what they expect from your service or your product. However, don't embellish upon it. It's just going to burn you later on. You always want to downplay it. And then I'll give you a couple other tips and angles here of how you can get into the cyberspace and also do pretty well. You're going to have to pay your dues just like anybody going through a new profession or a career change. So if you're in sales, just be careful what you ask for, because those people and those sales managers, they do exist. Not so much in California. We're a soft state. But you go to the East Coast or anywhere else around the world, and there are some pretty draconian type leaders that are out there. I would call them managers, though, because sales leaders don't need that. The studying component of cyber is immense, but once you kind of get into the repetition of staying up to speed on newest trends, attacks, platforms, cloud being probably the biggest change in the last 20 years overall to cybersecurity. I'll give you a little background in terms of what certifications might be important, and then also who you should network with. You don't network with me. You talk to me, but I also think you should be going to cyber events, not just pure sales stuff, not cyber happy hour. Go to research events. Go to folks that are actually doing the research, the people that are performing. They don't have people skills, so it's going to be a test on your personality and your sales skills to try to get friends with them. And if you've seen any kind of movie that characterizes cyber people, it's that and 100 times worse. So back to my first question of who's had a good sales experience. There's a few, and I'm sure some of you have, you just don't recall. That means the sales guy was really good or the sales lady was really good. But bad salespeople think alike. Bad salespeople feel they can preach and demand more from you without motivation. I don't give a shit about a Cadillac or steak knives. What I care about is quality of life. And if the sales leadership can provide that for you, or if you're the sales leader providing that for your team, you're going to go really far. They feel like you're invested in them, not just the quota. I show this picture here because used car sales has traditionally been the experience, but stock trading, Wolf of Wall Street, heavy substance abuse, high dollars. Great job, short lifespan. Why cyber? Besides the money, it's incredibly safe in terms of job security. The thing that you see oftentimes is layoffs with a lot of large organizations. They're not laying off cyber people. Most of the customers I have, at least in the large enterprise, the Fortune 50, they get paid probably the most out of the organization, more than the legal team. So the budgets for those teams are immense, and the ability to make a really good living for yourself and your family is also there. So if you see this on the left, $75 billion in 2015. That's the overall market size. It's pretty good. Not enough, because we keep seeing the same problems present themselves over and over again. By 2020, it's already jumped up to 170. This is over 200 by 2024. So if you're thinking about getting a piece of that, there are more than just sales and more than just practitioner roles to be played in cybersecurity. Project management, leadership, there's a bunch of other categories that support it, including marketing, including legal, patent, IP infringement. Those things are very, very important, especially in cyber. So you see the immense amount of money that's being spent and invested in cyber, that money stays. So what I'm saying by that is the opportunity for you to have a 10, 20-year lifespan, or even a 5-year pop at a startup where you have, I was the first sales guy at Cylance. They just got acquired by BlackBerry about a month ago for about $1.4 billion in cash. Great, that's really good. They're moving this product into the large enterprise. Large enterprise is now pushing this product into their products, which is good. It's also an indicator that they're trying to do the right thing. And doing the right thing actually means protecting your customer data and your own intellectual property. It's still not being done today. Regulation is the mafia style of forcing people to do things for protection. It's a protection racket. It's protect themselves, though. The organizations that are showing up in the news, Marriott, I have a Starwood's account. I just stayed at the W in New York. I used a burner credit card, of course, because I can't trust them to maintain and protect my data. But everyone's probably gotten a letter. Someone's probably shopped at Target, shopped at Home Depot. They probably went to an Applebee's or some sort of restaurant and have gotten a letter at some point saying that their information has been compromised. Congratulations, you get free credit checking monitoring services for a period of a year. Well, who gives a shit? That doesn't help you right now. That just tells you most likely you're going to have to go burn your credit cards and then go change all your passwords on everything. That's actually the true impact of those attacks. What they do is they run scripts against other platforms with known login sites with your login name and email and the password they stole. So if your banking account information is the same, as well as like your Starwoods membership password, you could potentially have a problem. And what that means is you'll never know. You may be frozen out of your account until you actually go and try to reset the password. Some people don't do that. It could be 6 months, it could be over a year. And as a result, your data is being sold in the black market. It's being sold to state-sponsored, also our government. That's not exclusive to just China, Russia, North Korea, Iran. Everybody's trying to get more data on you. You've also seen the same thing with your phones tracking everything. The apps are designed to show you something, provide some sort of value, convenience. Those apps aren't, there's a EULA for a reason and a README. Nobody understands what that means. It's complicated by design, much like the IRS or US tax code. The benefits of that are that we can give you apps and you willingly give us information for free. We sell that data. There's a rube every day. It's not legal, it's not ethical, it's not moral. However, who's going to do anything about it? Especially with the kind of Congress that we have in power today. So regulation, GDPR. I think it's really important to note, up to 20 million euros, or a percentage, 4% of your revenue, whatever is greater, is going to be assessed with any EU country that has a breach or data breach that could have been preventable. Any attack outside of that is going to be suspect and not probably falling under GDPR. However, most of the big breaches we've seen have been preventable. This is new. Governor Jerry Brown instituted this year. It goes into effect in January 2020. It's the California Consumer Privacy Act. Again, to recover the damages, it's not as bad or draconian as GDPR, but it's a good start. And what that means is with regulation comes the demand and the requirement to spend on cyber. And if folks are required to spend on cyber and you're a sales guy, it's really hard for them to say no if you're checking all the boxes and you're relatively likable and you don't look like one of those guys in that other picture. Relationship sales. This is something I learned from some really, really good salespeople in my life. I've been very fortunate to have them as mentors. The relationship sales is the trusted advisor. So you're not just cramming a product down their throat or a service down their throat because you have a quota. That's a you problem, not the customer problem. The customer has to be able to trust that you're going to have their best interests at heart and that you're there to get them promoted. If any salesperson does not think like that, get a new salesperson. You can probably get them on the phone. An inside sales rep may actually have more tact and diplomacy than some of the account executives that visit you on-prem that dress like this. I don't dress like this when I go to client sits, except in New York because they have so many fucking rules. So solution selling, cold calling, cold emailing, if you're doing that, great. But I'd like to know the benchmarks of how successful that is for your company. Don't do that. It's annoying. Nobody wants to get called and say, hey, sir, ma'am, would you like to buy this thing I'm selling because I have to do this as a job? It doesn't apply to you. It's very, very low success, especially in 2018. So, and then, of course, the emails. Emails are just spam to most folks. We put them in your junk folder. You never read them. So email blasts are great when you're making a marketing announcement or you're going to be at an event. But if you're constantly sending emails out saying, come to our website, sign up for something, blah, 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 it sounds desperate. It also sounds like you really, really need these kind of ankle biter type approaches to be successful. They don't work. Zig Ziglar, actually a pretty good salesperson, comes out of the more Dale Carnegie influencing your friends type model. I don't apply everything that I've learned from him just in his books, but the approach to how you sell is also about solving the problem. And in cybersecurity, it's very, very imperative. There's so much competition out there right now, and there's so much VC money in private equity firms in this space that they are pushing that sales model of Alec Baldwin down their sales team's throats. There are vendors I know that have had their phone numbers blacklisted. So they have to actually go buy a new block of numbers to then begin their inside sales process. Also, if you want to know how to get out of that, just tell them you have money next year. And that person will be fired probably in the next quarter anyway, because that's how high stakes those inside sales roles are. But you won't get a call back until that next year. And just keep stringing them along, because there's always going to be a new inside salesperson. If they're really good, they go to the field. Substance abuse. All of you have probably heard about it, know about it, or have it. Pills, Adderall, amphetamines, widely pervasive in almost any performance-related job, but also intellectual jobs. Just because the doctor prescribes it to you does not mean that you need it. And also, if you abuse it, that becomes a problem for you later on. Alcohol. You saw me taking swigs of whiskey today. The approach to alcohol abuse is one of monitored consumption. I can't say that I've been not guilty of abusing that, because whiskey's so delicious. However, don't make that an excuse, and don't inject that in your life, because that will bring you down. I've seen a lot of my friends have to go to rehab, and they become unhireable, especially at a smaller company, because they're high risk. And if they get a DUI, you get fired, because you have to represent the brand. You may also have customers in your car, so you can no longer be trusted. You know this, no surprise here. This is also extremely pervasive in sales roles. How do you turn off your brain, and how do you get out of the quota mindset at the end of the night or on the weekend? It's always hanging on you like a cloud. Regardless of how good a year you have, you still have to think about the next year. How are you going to get to that number? So you have a $4 million or $20 million quota. How are you going to get there? They bought from you 1 year. You don't get paid on renewals or the annuity for the subscription. You got to go find new deals. So as a result, folks tend to turn and get burned by substance abuse. If you see or have been exposed to it by a salesperson in a non-professional setting, get away from them. Also, food. Restaurants, wine and dine, et cetera, et cetera. Food is nowhere near as bad. However, when your friends and colleagues start having ailments related to their dietary intake and the lack of exercise and their unhealthy balance with the other things behind them, they become non-valuable to you as an organization. So it's just something to look out for. We don't have accreditation, much like legal or medicine, so the certification processes are good. I have a CISSP from 2009. There's a bunch of other certifications from AWS, from Cisco, Microsoft, what have you. They're very, very important to your fundamentals of understanding the cyber challenge and the cyber problem. I encourage you to go and experience and take those exams, get certified. However, they're not a guarantee you're going to get into cyber. There is a lot of competition, and a lot of the schools now are actually teaching comp sci with cyber. So the folks that are coming out are heavily educated on the technicals. As a salesperson, you don't have to be, but you have to be able to trust that you have to be able to assess the technical persons you're putting into the meeting are going to have the customer's minds and intentions at heart, but also help you be successful. So you have to be able to screen them, because you're building a team to take to the field to go to battle. There's a little bit of arrogance in cyber. I don't know how many people have had their machine taken from them by a cyber person and said that this machine is probably compromised and blah, blah, blah. They never really tell you much. And then they give you another machine. The ability to have people skills and talk to folks is still a problem. We lack a lot of maturity. It's a very young profession. However, we're slowly trying to change that and integrate more diversity into the cyber industry. You're going to see a tremendous amount of passive aggressiveness too. Security professionals and practitioners think they're so fucking smart, so they come at you as if you don't know anything. Meanwhile, they can't figure out how to tie a tie or brush their teeth correctly. And so you see that sometimes in the office. I don't want to be derogatory towards the practitioners, but they can be assholes, and it's not their fault. They just don't know any better because they've been in an insulated environment for most of their lives. So be prepared, because it will be frustrating. It will drive you crazy. Just read that book. If you read that book, you'll understand sales, and I think you actually have. I've had tremendous amounts of success just because of actually taking some of this from the book and actually applying it to my life. So that's the pitch from me to you. Come to cyber. You don't need brass balls to sell cybersecurity. Actually, women do a lot better in sales these days than a lot of the men because they think like that. And also, where you're coming from is not important. If you have charisma and charm and you're willing to crack the books and network and put in the effort and show up to all the events that are at night, It shows that you have persistence, and you're not going to walk because you're confused or it sounds challenging. You're willing to go through it and pay your dues and move yourself into a profession that might be more beneficial to you and your family. Let's open it up to questions.
I forgot Mike was leaving. Oh. Thanks, Schell. Great presentation. As always, you're hilarious. This guy, when he comes to our office, everybody in the office is like, dude, where's the guy that drinks a lot?
That's me. I drink. He has beer in his fridge, and I'm not selling to him. So
we have beer and a bar in our office, so it's hard to refuse. Anyway, great presentation. This guy leads the cybersecurity influencer market here in Pasadena. He runs a meetup similar to this, but focused specifically on cybersecurity. I really encourage you to connect with Mike. Let's open up to Q&A. Questions only. So if your comment when you get the microphone doesn't end with a question mark, please hold it for later. Mike will talk to you for a brief second. Yeah. He has to get going, but you can connect with him later.
I'm not hiring. So questions. I can get you guys into the right conversation, but thanks, Mike.
If you have a question, you get a sticker.
Yeah, you get a Cyber Happy Hour sticker.
I just wanted a Cyber Happy Hour.
Oh, you just wanted the sticker. Okay. So,
I'll take it back. She didn't ask a question.
Oh,
no, I'm kidding.
I thought it was information about where it was.
Well, you have the internet. It's the first step to getting into cyber is using the browser.
I was just going to ask if you could talk a little bit more about passwords. You mentioned changing your passwords, and it seems like a really daunting task because, in particular, all the different sites you may or may not have signed up for and then forgot about, and who knows. So I was just wondering if there was a clear path through that.
Yeah, use a password manager. Password managers are really, really good, and it eliminates the need for you to memorize it. It's almost like a token type approach where it logs in. I know the dilemma. I have the same thing because I had to go back and reset all my passwords after this Marriott Starwood thing. But it seems like every month you have to go and reset passwords for something. Your bank, your real estate company, whoever is you're actually doing business with. So complex passwords are great, but password managers are better. They've been attacked and they've been hacked before, but you're going to have higher success and lower incidence of potential compromise or breach with password managers. Once the password's been compromised and you get that letter, you go back to your password manager, generate another one. That alleviates all the issues, also having to worry about browser cache, where the browser maintains and saves the password, which is great as a feature, but if you forget, it can lock you out as you're trying to click in and things like that. The email reset thing is also a little dodgy because it's very easy for them to intercept the email or also make it look like a password reset coming from them. And then you click on it and give them a new password, and then it starts all over again. Good question.
Hi, this is Jagdish. Just had a quick question regarding when you go to your customers, right? In olden days, there was a relational database so people could find exactly what event happened when, In a cloud scenario where things are in flux or in transition, do you see requests from your customers saying, how are you dealing with these problems, and any solutions?
So for the bag I carry from Dublin, Ireland, no, and the reason being is they're pretty hardcore security practitioners. So they kind of already have this, they already know how they're going to log in and authenticate themselves. They've also got multi-factor authentication enabled. So not on that side of the front. The business decision makers are not logging into those portals and those platforms on our side. If they are, that's because they fired somebody and they have to go and pull a report. But in terms of that, no. But in the average user who is using like just regular sites, like your banking site or anything for your healthcare, that's a very common problem. And there's tremendous amounts of desktop support costs that goes to those companies because they don't have a proper solution for the password reset process, and also they don't have strong authentication enabled to prevent that. And they may also not be doing good security. So good security will prevent the compromise or the breach of your password.
Hey, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit about selling platforms that maybe you don't necessarily believe in, or they're new and nobody knows about them, and the challenges around that?
Yeah, I'm only 25. I look 40. as a result of doing stupid fucking startups that actually don't get anyone to buy, and they run out of money, and now you look like a dickhead who sold them a bag of goods they're never going to be able to use. I've taken that beating. It doesn't feel good. It's kind of funny afterwards, but it still stings a little bit because you kind of represent yourself a certain way, and you feel like you misled them. Those are salespeople with morals and ethics. The other ones don't care. They just take the money, turn and burn. But small companies, if you're getting into cyber, do not do a startup. Do not do a startup. Do not do a startup. You will not have success if you don't have the relationship and the network to rely upon. If you go to a large company, go to one that can afford your salary and your benefits package. Do not go to a startup.
Hi. I'm Valerie. I'm the CEO of a startup. We're building relationship platforms for communication for couples. And we're right now in this space of a technical debate over creating our own user authentication or using Auth0. Mm-hmm. And I would love your thoughts on Auth0.
OAuth, do not invent something. Don't do your own encryption. They call that encryption for a reason. Just license it and pay for it, because the amount of vulnerabilities that may be persistent in something you design is something you may not be able to catch up on and stay maintained. So you've got to consistently push builds, and pushing builds changes the impact and the risk to the profile of that platform. If you're not using something standard, you're going to become a victim quite quickly, and as a startup and a CEO, you can't afford the brand damage. It's a good question. Okay. Yes, sir.
Cybersecurity strikes me as something where you're selling to several people in a department as opposed to just one person, and you have to worry about the relationships and maybe even rivalries that are within that group. How do you handle that sort of complex sales approach, or what's your process?
That is why real good salespeople make good money, and others don't. If you're not aware of the politics and the team dynamics, and you don't invest in trying to understand and learn more, you want to, what they call, the term that a lot of folks use is you sell high, party low. You drink and eat and have good times with the folks that are actually doing the real work, but you're selling to the person who signs the purchase order and actually approves the purchase. If you can understand the dilemma of the team dynamics as well as the management problem, you'll have a lot of success. There's also a time where you can't share information to other team leaders that you know are in that relationship with you. And the reason being is many, because you could open up a can of worms that you have no understanding of. So it's always best, when in doubt, keep your mouth shut. But also be aware that, if this project is highly successful, who is the other managers that are going to be impacted by it? Are they all going to be brought up, or is someone going to look bad? And if someone's going to look bad, that person's coming for you and coming for that manager. And if they're a legacy person, they've been 10, 20 years at a large studio, good luck. You're going to have your hands full. I've lost plenty of deals at studios here in Los Angeles as a result of not being aware of that, but also not doing the right thing of spending more time with the account. So not investing properly was a detriment to my success.
Back here.
So you had mentioned cold calling and emails that go to spam, not the best tactic. So what do you think is the best sales tactic?
So this is a tough one. How many people have bought something because someone called you on the phone and said you should buy this? Yeah, that's dead. Oh, we got one. So, yeah, that model doesn't work anymore. So what you actually do is you buy org chart information. So if your salesperson does not have relationships, the person that you're investing in is a CEO or an entrepreneur, you're building your sales team, that book of business is incredibly important. If they don't have a legitimate book of, because a lot of sales guys lie, they'll tell you they have this Rolodex, blah, blah, blah. That's an old school thing where you put phone numbers in for the folks who don't know what Rolodex is. But if you don't have an address book that has great contacts and folks that will actually take your call, they've hustled you into paying them salary for 6 to 12 months, because it's going to take you about a year to 2 years to understand if the salesperson's worth their salt or not. If you're going to build out that sales model, inside sales is okay when you have a brand, but it's not an aggressive approach, and I wouldn't use it to lead. You do workshops, lunch and learns, happy hours, get engaged in events like this. You have to be out there at 90% is showing up, as that old adage. If you don't show up and engage and show where and get involved where your customers or your potential clients, prospects are, they're not going to know you. And people like to buy from people they know and people they like. And if they don't know who you are, they're not going to give you time of day. So it requires the salesperson to get out there and go to Cloud Security Alliance, go to OS, go to ISSA, go to Cyber Happy Hour. Outside of that, you can also use other approaches like spending money in marketing events, things of that nature. Email campaigns have very low ROI. A booth also has low ROI, but the booth shows that you can afford to pay for it, and you're probably going to be around next year. If you don't have that, you're going to have to bite, claw, and scratch, and that means you're going to have a good salesperson that's going to cost you a lot of money.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
The fun presentation. Thank you.
Thanks.
How did you get into this, and why did you decide to get into this field? What were you doing beforehand? And then are you not one of the Baldwin brothers?
If I was the Baldwin brothers, I guess they would probably be up here too, because some of those guys are losers, and like they would be from an elevated movie, right, to speaking in Pasadena at a free event. That would be the young one, right? Probably. No, I did dress it up like this a bit, red tie, all the goofball suit, just for the effect. How I got into this, when I got out of the military, I had a little bit of IT skills. Went to college, dropped out of college. Someone approached me. I was working as a system admin at UCSD in San Diego, and cybersecurity was just being built out at the university, and they couldn't hire anybody, so they poached me over from another department. I started cutting my teeth. I eventually became an information security officer for a hospital in San Diego, and then eventually became a sales engineer because I had technical background and not the sales chops. But I was always a bartender. I'd always had done some sort of sales. I was always engaging with folks and strangers. That becomes very valuable at some point with training and honing. But yeah, to answer your question, I started out the path of which I recommend for anyone getting into sales and cyber is to go, if you're technically proficient, go the sales engineer route and pay your dues. I only had to be at IBM for 2 years as an SC before they gave me the entire Pacific region, and it was because of attrition. So opportunity breeds change. Why everyone's quitting is because they suck. They wanted an easy job. They wanted to go in and say, hey, buy my Cisco or my IBM product because it's good. You don't get fired for buying Cisco or IBM. Well, today you do. Yeah, that's dead. So you have to go out and approach it. You don't have to be an SE, but it helps. I would say I'm probably one of the more technical folks that I have out of my colleagues and peers, but I'm not the only one. There's plenty of us that are actually good at cracking the manual and reading the book, or TFM.
Thanks for that presentation. My question was just kind of interested to see your thoughts on selling to a startup versus selling to a tenured company. If there's much of a difference, or you think it's the same process? So
I sell to my friends' startups because I know I'll get the money out of them. I do not sell to startups I don't know. Especially I sell to my friends' startups that has a track record of success because I know they have the funds to pay, so they're not going to skip out on the invoice. That's one thing that'll burn you if you're a new salesperson and you did give them a sweetheart discount and they just claim they're not going to pay the tap. That will most likely put some black marks on your position at that organization. I don't like selling to startups, mostly because they don't have enough money to invest in the cyber problem. And they don't get paid for having a secure platform. They get paid for having a platform that's available to the client. And so as a result, security is often after the fact and after the breach. So their insurance payment comes, now they start spending money. It's always reactive. It's the same with a lot of folks. I think it's just it's human nature. But it does not serve the organization well to not use security as a sales tactic. If your platform and your team is out in the community talking and doing research about the startup and how they do security, you use that as a sales tactic. Our team is mostly made up of pen testers and developers, hence the people skills issue. So but outside of that, they're extremely proficient, and I would be proud to put them in a room with anybody to have them be grilled about what we're doing for security in our platform.
It looks like there's no more questions, but I want a sticker, so I'll go and ask a question. You mentioned you have a lot of, you had a lot of mentors. Do you have any closing thoughts besides what you've already said in your presentation about what you learned from those mentors and the advice that they've given you that has really stuck in your mind?
So I have an unorthodox and painful approach. I've got a big mouth. I don't really respect sometimes the concerns of their time. This isn't past experiences. As I've gotten older, you want to make things easier for yourself, not more difficult. So if you have a chip on your shoulder, you're going to get punched in the face several times. You may lose your job. All of that's happened to me. You project a lifestyle, especially in certain regions. Southern California and San Francisco are different cultures. New York and LA are different cultures. You have to understand that and appreciate that. The tactics of how sales is approached in those regions are different because the people are different. LA and Southern California, very laid back. They don't wear ties. They wear flip-flops. May not wear deodorant. If you are in that kind of culture, you need to project a lifestyle that you think, based on what you've learned, that they would like to experience. So anywhere from drinking, parties, playing pool, bowling, golf, girls, whatever that might be. Keep your nose clean, so to speak, and show them a good time, and be responsible about it. If you can show them a good time and they don't feel like you've got dirt on them, they're more likely going to be able to trust you more. And if you cannot project that and be trustworthy, you're going to have a very short lifespan. And so I think projecting the lifestyle that the customer is looking for is sometimes important. It's not always required. And also the executive level, they're really, really good because they've had training. And so they know to stay away from the vendors because of appearances, regardless of what we're talking about or any of that sort. But yeah, I've had plenty of executives go grab lunches with me and have beer at lunch. All good. But handle your booze. If you can't drink, don't drink in front of customers. That's a stupid idea. You're not going to prove yourself on a client sit. 9 times out of 10, you're told no. Get used to that. You take a beating. Go drown it in brown like the rest of us.
Mike, over here. We got
Sure.
one more question.
Hey, thank you. Listening to you was just fabulous and wonderful presentation. My question for you, when you look at your professional portfolio of relationships, various employers, some will say, hey, I didn't hire you for your relationships. I hired you to get the job done. So in your tenure, with all your experience, how would you break down percentage-wise those relationships from 15 years ago and the relationships that you manage today from 5 years ago? How many do you actively cultivate when you look at your portfolio of long-term relationships?
That's a good question. I've lost some relationships, and it's both ways, right? For some reason, the customer had an issue, or I had an issue, where they weren't trustworthy and I couldn't depend upon them. That's a problem. So it's a two-way street. But you're right. That often comes in an area of high-performing requirements because it's a smaller company that requires more sales output. In which case, that requires a salesperson to get creative, which sometimes is outside of their scope of their job description, which always pisses off the CEO because they think they know what's best. If the fucking CEO knew what he was talking about, he wouldn't need you as a salesperson. He'd be able to do this without you. Oftentimes, the VP of sales is brought in as a buffer because the CEO is actually not well versed on the sales cycle. The sales cycle and the relationship piece is the secret sauce to the salesperson's career. If they have truly good relationships, and I've had some great ones that are 15 years since I've been in the industry. My mentor still buys from me, by the way, not because he feels sorry for me, but because I've been groomed properly. I have plenty of accounts here in LA that have been over 10 years. And I have a lot of friends who have been thrown out of those accounts who don't have a relationship anymore with those same relationships I have due to something negative that was perceived that they've conducted or done.
So for the entrepreneur sitting in this audience, when you look at the potency and power of long-term relationships and the ability to secure leadership and channel that leadership, what would you suggest if someone just doesn't have the depth and the capacity? What emphasis and importance do you place on anyone's entrepreneurial ambition that A, maybe has a network that never really utilized it, or perhaps like yourself, when you look at your top 10, you're like, they didn't come to me last week.
Yeah.
This has been because of my ability to build the long term.
That's a great question. I'll share a quick story. I worked at a startup here in Altadena. It was a third-party risk software agent. It's been acquired by a company in New Jersey. For the 2 years I was there, I could not call on any of my friends to buy this shitty software I was pitching. So I had to take the beating from the leadership team as to why I wasn't touching these accounts. Because I didn't want to. I knew that if I pushed that onto them, I would lose their respect and I might lose the account because the software wasn't something that I stood behind. Now, I'd like to believe that every software is great and you can get behind it as a salesperson, but the salesperson, if they're really good, recognizes their brand is almost more important than the company's brand. Because if the salesperson's brand is important, that money comes to the company. You now help build something, and then you gain the respect from the leadership team that invested in you and took the risk with hiring you. if you're looking to hire salespeople, you should have some key questions. And when you ask about the relationships and the names, ask for names so you can go and do your own research. Ask them what they do in their spare time with those clients. What are they doing? Do they go golf? Do they smoke cigars? Do they play darts? Do they have time where they spend as if they're friends? And if you make friends with your customers, you have to have some boundaries. That can go a long way because they start to understand your problem and your dilemma, and they become fans and they cheer and support for you. Even outside of them buying directly, they always have friends that that platform or that software service might make more sense for. So if you ask those questions and get to the bottom of the relationship and how valuable it is and how real it is, they're probably a good salesperson.
Hey, Schell, I'm Panda. And so you've mentioned Carnegie's sort of methodology with interacting with people, and I think you've maybe hinted at some of the methods of the trusted advisor, which I've heard of coming from Sandler's methodology. For those of us who are new and or maybe trying to improve ourselves, what of maybe Sandler's method, if you're familiar with it, could you give us some of your insight? What's good, bad, ugly, kind of quick take-home points, something that we should pursue in addition to this Carnegie method or not?
So that's a good question. I'm not familiar with Sandler's methodology. And this book is more of kind of like guidelines, not necessarily methodology of how to behave in a social circle of people that you may know or may not know. And then you take it for what it's worth and apply it to your life and your personality. I think the most important part is shut the fuck up and listen. Like a lot of sales guys do. I'm guilty of talking too much because I think I have something to say. Well, everybody on the planet has an opinion and wants to say something. If you're more of a listener, you can then articulate your response in a way that answers their question and get you the information that you need. Because often communication is sometimes hard to do, even with verbal and written communication. You still may not understand the nuance of the ask. So the longer you stay quiet, the more you can gain from it. And then you have a more appropriate response that sounds like you understand the problem. I think that was something that I wish I would have learned a long time ago that people would have told me about. And actually, everything in the slide deck is shit I didn't know that I had to go experience by myself. So I've had some good mentors, and other mentors are like, you got to go fail on your own. Very, very important. So all these things that I've experienced are different. They may not be applicable to you. But what I found from reading this book, and I've read it several times, is that relationship will build you success. And it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Thank you, Mike. Schell.
Thank you.
Never call you Schell. I should call you Schell more. I gotta say, I've known you for a few years now, and I'm always impressed with your knowledge around cybersecurity and your knowledge around relationships and sales. Appreciate you ending the year, our last meetup of the year here, talking about sales, get us hyped up for next year. Appreciate all the knowledge. Is there anything that we can, as a group of members here for Friday Coffee Meetup, do to help you and anything that you're working on right now?
Come check out Cyber Happy Hour. Yeah.
When is it?
We haven't booked our next event, but join the meetup on the membership, the Cyber Happy Hour, Innovate Pasadena Cyber Happy Hour, and come check it out. And then also go to some other functions here. There are other events here, San Gabriel Valley Tech Meetup. There's a bunch of those. Go check them out. Push through the fact that you don't know people and you have anxiety and the conversation doesn't make any sense to you. Just sit and be quiet and maybe attend more than one. Go to a couple of them. Get your name out there. Introduce yourself. Be engaging. Most people won't give a shit about that, but it'll be important because if you're persistent, people respect persistence more than personality and charm.